We haven't. We're giving weapons, but we've given so many weapons. But we are giving weapons, and we're working with them and trying to help them. But we haven't. You know, Biden emptied out our whole country giving them weapons. And we have to make sure that we have enough for ourselves.
US President Donald Trump is frustrated with Putin and agreed to impose sanctions against Russia. Trump and Putin hold a phone call. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has halted some military assistance to Ukraine. So is Trump ready to ruin Russia, and why did the Pentagon decide to stop sending some weapons to Ukraine? On Thursday, US President Trump and Vladimir Putin held a phone conversation that lasted nearly an hour. During their discussions, they talked about the situation in the Middle East and the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. Putin congratulated Trump on US Independence Day and highlighted Russia's significant role in the formation of the United States. Trump retaliated his call for the earliest ceasefire in Ukraine, but he expressed disappointment about the results of this conversation. Trump stated that he did not make any progress toward ending the war in Ukraine and noted that Putin seems uninterested in finding the way out of this war.
I'm very disappointed with the conversation I had today with President Putin, because I don't think he's there. I don't think he's there. And I'm very disappointed. Well, it's not, I'm just saying, I don't think he's looking to stop. And that's too bad. This is Biden. This isn't me. This is Biden's war. It wouldn't have happened if I were president. It wouldn't have happened. So, you know, in one way I had to get too involved because it's Biden's war. And I got stuck in the middle of it, just like I did with immigration and a lot of other things that they screwed up. But I was not happy with the conversation, no.
Meanwhile, Russia conducted missiles and drone attacks on Ukraine overnight, and Pentagon has halted shipments of some air defense systems to Ukraine due to worries that the US weapons stockpiles have fallen too low, according to Politico. The decision was driven by Elbridge Colby, the Pentagon's policy chief, following a review of the military's munitions stockpiles. Concerns arose about the numbers of artillery rounds, air defense missiles, and other munitions. Sources familiar with the issue indicated that the decision to withhold some aid promised during Biden administration was made in early June, but its implementation is occurring only now, as Ukraine is successfully repelling Russia's largest Russian missile and drone attacks on civilian targets. These sources were granted anonymity to discuss ongoing operation, and the Pentagon did not respond to a request for comment. White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly stated that the decision was made to prioritize America's interests following a Department of Defense review of our nation's military support and assistance to other countries. Quote, "The strength of the US armed forces remains unquestioned." This decision comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with US President Donald Trump during NATO summit in Hague last week. The US president, who has expressed frustration over Russian President Putin's reluctance to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine, emerged from the meeting more sympathetic to Ukraine and did not rule out the possibility of sending additional Patriot missiles to Ukraine, despite Pentagon's decision to freeze certain air defense systems help to Ukraine. The Pentagon's decision to hold some shipments has raised concerns about among Ukrainian allies in Congress, because Ukraine could be more vulnerable after this decision. After this Russian strikes, also American congressman stated, quote, "US-made air defense systems, including Patriot platforms, are the cornerstone of Ukraine defenses. They work and save lives every day. If this reporting is true, then Mr. Colby is taking actions that could result in the imminent death of many Ukrainians. The munitions involved include a mix of air defense and precision weapons that have been supplied to Ukraine for over 2 years. Additionally, the halted shipments of weapons are a mix of two different streams of support the US has provided Ukraine both under the Biden and Trump administration. Some munitions are drawn from current stockpiles, with the DoD receiving funds to quickly replenish these supplies. Another source of funding is the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, where the US allocates money to purchase weapons for Ukraine from American defense companies. This funding has been used to place contracts for weapons on behalf of the Ukrainian government. All of this money in this fund was obliged by the end of the Biden administration, and deliveries are made as the systems are ready. Drawdowns from the current stockpiles have also continued under the Trump administration, which has been utilizing the remaining funds from the $61 billion allocated by the US Congress to replenish US stockpiles of weapons. And also the Trump's administration has not requested any additional aid for Ukraine, although there are sufficient funds remaining from the Biden administration to support Ukraine for several months, according to administration official. A source familiar with the matter says that Pentagon has been categorizing munitions based on their criticality since February due to concerns over the use of air defense munition in Yemen. Pentagon had prepared an action memo to deliver to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, recommending a freeze on some of the most urgently needed munitions in US stockpiles for Ukraine. However, this decision remained unaddressed for months as the DoD underwent personnel turnover. Meanwhile, 3 Democratic senators announced they are investigating the Trump administration 5-month pause on new sanctions against Russia related to its war in Ukraine. Senators Jeannie Shaheen, Elizabeth Warren, and Chris Coons criticized Trump's inaction, stating instead of taking steps to pressure aggressors, Trump is doing nothing. And we will investigate this missed opportunity to push for an end of this war. Since Trump began his second term in January, the US has not issued any new sanctions against Russia. Under former President Biden, more than 6,000 sanctions targeting Russian entities were imposed, averaging over 170 per sanctions per month, according to New York Times. Senators argue that the lack of new sanctions allows Vladimir Putin to continue his aggression in Ukraine. They question, quote, why is the president who says he wants to end a major war instead allowing the aggressor to run rampant? They highlighted that Trump has also stopped regular updates to sanctions and export controls, enabling further support for Russia's war efforts. This investigation follows reports that Pentagon paused some aid to Ukraine, which Democrats quickly criticized and condemned. Republican Democratic Senator Adam Smith criticized the administration for jeopardizing U.S. national security and for cutting off vital support for Ukraine in this crucial moment. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell explains that the pause is a part of review of military stockpiles, asserting the need to prioritize U.S. security. However, Shaheen, Warren, and Coons urged the administration to enforce current sanctions and collaborate with European allies to tighten measures against Russia. They stated, quote, to secure just and lasting peace, we must demonstrate resolve with our G7 partners and show Putin that the cost will keep rising as long as he continues his brutal war against Ukraine. Also, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with EU's Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas in Brussels on Wednesday to discuss ahead of the upcoming EU-China summit. Kallas, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, emphasized that both sides should address the challenges including market access, economic imbalances, the Russia-Ukraine war, and the worsening situation in the Middle East. This was highlighted in their strategic dialogue meeting in Brussels, which precedes the summit in Beijing later this month. During the 4-hour talks with Kallas, Wang Yi stated that Beijing cannot accept Russian defeat in the war against Ukraine. Sources indicated that in a closed-door meeting, Wang expressed concerns that if Russia were to lose, the US would shift its full attention to China. This position aligns with what many in Brussels believe to be China's actual stance, despite Beijing officially maintaining neutrality in this war. Additionally, Wang Yi denied any accusation of providing financial or military support to Russia, arguing that had China truly supported Moscow, the war would have ended long ago. Throughout the intense 4-hour discussion, Wang Yi reportedly provided Kallas with historical lectures to support Chinese government's views. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine.